I've had this video done for the past few days, but I've been racking my brain trying to figure out what to title this thing. First, I had it as that they deliver on their promise for 5.1 systems, but the more I think about it, and to be honest, these really are my favorite thing that I've reviewed this year. So that's what this is. Hey, how's it going? This is Joe, and today I'm going to be talking about some new speakers that I'm reviewing, the Monolith M518HTs, and I'm going to do my best to try to cover as much as possible, but if I miss anything and if you have a question, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. I don't know if you remember from back in the day, the home theater in the box, the subwoofer satellite combo. These speakers kind of remind me of that, but they actually deliver on their promise. One of the most famous subwoofer satellite combos was the Bose Acoustimask, which I've recently reviewed, but those left something to be desired in that there was some missing frequencies in the mid-range region. The highs weren't very crisp and the lows didn't get very low. But these, they do all of those things extremely well. And so this gets me really excited. It reminds me back in the day when I would be looking through those Crutchfield magazines, and I really couldn't afford too much from those, let's be honest. But what I could afford, I would just hope that it would be good. I probably could have afforded this system, and this system is actually impressive. Having tested this for the past few weeks, what it reminded me is that a great 5.1 setup is still impressive. It's still immersive. I know nowadays we have Dolby Atmos and all these immersive formats that people love, but you know what? A great 5.1 system is, to me, better than a mediocre Atmos system. The great thing about that is you can buy an inexpensive 5.1 audio video receiver and it won't cost you very much. All you need is that, some speaker cables, some RCA interconnects, and that's it. You're good to go. So before we get into it, and for full disclosure, Monolith is a channel sponsor. They sent these out free for me to review. I am able to say whatever I want about these, and they did not review this prior. When I got these in, I was excited to try them out. So I threw them in my home theater system just because it's all wired up. In that system, I have 13 speakers, 3 subs. It's a pretty crazy system. So I wasn't expecting much from this budget 5.1 system. I should mention these are currently $799, so not very expensive for 5 speakers and a sub. Anyway, I tried them out, I was impressed, and I am already I don't know what else to say. I don't want to give it all away, but you can tell. So I tested some movies and music, and both sounded excellent on this system. I'll be honest, I didn't want to go through and recalibrate the whole system, so I just set it up with no EQ on my home theater, just out of the box. All I did was I set the crossover to 80 Hertz so I didn't blow up the speakers. I didn't even set the sub volume, and everything just sounded really good out of the box. So what that tells me is when they designed these, they took into consideration the sensitivity of the speakers and they set the volume accordingly on the mains. It just makes it very easy for someone who doesn't have experience to just set these up, and for the most part, it's going to sound pretty good. Good subwoofer satellite integration is important because you don't want it to sound like you're listening to small speakers and a subwoofer. You want it to sound like you're listening to a bunch of larger speakers. Let me first talk about the THX satellite speakers, which I've reviewed previously. They have a 4.5-inch concentric, which means that they're good for imaging. They have clear highs. They have bass that goes down to 80 Hertz, which is important, so you can cross it over with your sub. And overall, I'm happy with them. They're small, they're easy to mount. Everything's good with those. Check out my review in the description if you want to see one specifically for the THX satellite speakers. Let's talk about the sub for a second. The sub, I was really expecting to be underwhelmed with it, just from previous experiences with inexpensive subs. This is an 8-inch sub, so I wasn't really expecting very much. But what I did notice is, that this is really the star of the show, and I was surprised. It did come with a port plug. I don't know why it had that, but I did test and measure with it on and off just for fun. The subwoofer does have 3 EQ modes. The THX mode gives you the least amount of distortion, but it also limits the low frequency extension to about 30 Hertz. Then you have EQ2, which is similar to THX mode. I'm not sure why they kept that in. I think they could have left it out. But then they have EQ1, which gives you the most bass extension. and it's noticeable. I'll show you in the measurements later on how deep it actually goes, but what their claim is on the website is about 24 hertz. I think that's about what I measured also. For my preference, I like EQ1 because it did have the most bass. You already know me, more bass extension. That makes me happy. EQ1. Now, the sub does not have a limiter that I was able to detect, so you are able to make it distort. So be careful. You know, I noticed that I could play it down to about minus 10 dB. So 0 dB is the reference volume. That's very loud. I normally listen around minus 15, minus 20. So minus 10 is already louder than I normally listen. But just keep in mind, if you do listen at louder volumes or if you have a giant space, these aren't really the speakers for that. These are THX Compact Certified, which is really for a small room. I should be specific that I was hitting minus 10 dB with the Dolby Amaze demo. I was able to play it louder with certain music, but you still have to be careful because some music is louder and has more bass than others. So just be aware. So these were designed by Dan Roemer, who also designed the popular Arendelle speakers and now at Per Listen. So here I say review, but I meant to say design. Everything that I've seen him review from the Encore series has been something I like. So he's starting to become my new favorite speaker designer. Very consistent. It's funny because I hear people say this, but I was there to just test the speakers and I ended up just listening to a bunch of music. I forgot that I was even testing them just because I was enjoying the process. One side note is the AVR I had it connected to in the home theater was a Denon S760H, which is really overkill for these speakers. But I got to test out Dolby speaker virtualizer. I've never needed to do that because I actually have height speakers, and I was pretty impressed. Like the thing actually worked in that particular room. Yeah, so maybe that'll be for another review. I did look it up, and you could get that same feature on the Denon S760H. I don't know if there are others also, but that has the Dolby speaker virtualizer. And right now I see it on sale for $485. These really are meant for a smaller room. And I could have just assumed that it would have been good because if it works in a large space, it'll probably sound good in a smaller space. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure. So I did set it up here in the office. This is about a 10 by 10 space, not very large, perfect for this setup. And so I did do that. I set it up with another overkill AVR, an NAD T778, which is about $3,000, and it does have DIRAC. So this time I did use calibration, and I can say it sounds better just because they were time aligned, level matched, and there was just a better blend between the satellite speaker and the subwoofer. So previously I've talked to Simon from another company, OSD, and he kept telling us that, you know, if you were to use the same exact speakers, it's the best thing that you could do. And I always thought, yeah, as long as the speakers are timbre matched, that's good enough. With EQ, that's good enough. But I kind of am starting to agree with them because here with the exact same speakers, it just sounds very cohesive. So what it sounds like to me is that the timbre match of all the speakers means that they're all supporting each other throughout the entire frequency range, something that may not be the case if the speakers aren't perfectly matched. I was already impressed with how these sounded in the home theater, but in a smaller room like this, these really shine. My main concern was because the speakers are small and they have bass, you sacrifice the sensitivity. These are very low sensitivity, and I wasn't sure if it would just play loud enough. I've tested it, and I can say, yeah, it can play loud enough, more than loud enough for my comfort level. Again, the start of the show for me is the subwoofer. The bass was showing down to 20 hertz, 21 hertz, I think, for DIRAC. And so that's in room, but just keep in mind, that's what it was detecting, and that's what I was also hearing. So you're not getting 20 hertz with crazy authority, but just know that it's there and it's noticeable. The speakers themselves were actually measuring a little bit lower when I placed them in the room, just because the walls are closer. So they were getting down to 60 hertz here in the small room. So if you're interested, we can take a look at the measurements now. If you're not, just go ahead and skip ahead. You won't hurt my feelings. So you can see this is from my previous review of the Monolith THX satellite speakers, and you can tell that it's not perfectly flat, but not too bad either. So I would say plus or minus 3 dB. So let's say here, you know, it's staying within that range for most of the frequency response. Response is a little bit rising, but again, because you see from the directivity index here that these are EQable, which is what I've noticed. It's just a property of the concentric drivers. Typically, they're pretty good with EQ. So here we're taking a look at that 8-inch subwoofer. This is with EQ1 here, and notice they're using some DSP to make that flat, guaranteed. They're claiming a frequency response of 24 hertz. So if I click here. That's about the peak, 105 dB. So 3 decibels down would be around here. 24 hertz, that's what they said. I also like to look at the minus 10 dB point because you will be able to hear that in a room. The minus 10 dB point is here around 20 hertz. They're not going to claim 20 hertz, but I'll tell you guys that you will experience some of that in a room. Not as much authority as if you had like a big old sub that can play legitimately down to 20 hertz, but you will hear and experience that bass. So that is EQ1. So I did not test for distortion, but I would assume that because it's able to play lower than some of these other EQs like EQ2, that it'll distort more as well. So here's EQ2. What do you notice is it doesn't play as low. Here is the THX EQ, and you'll notice that it has even less bass than EQ2, and that's because I believe that THX has a distortion spec. It can't go past a certain threshold of distortion in that specific room size. And so this is the most conservative. You will get the cleanest bass output. You will likely be able to play it louder with that mode, but I like this extended mode because I just need that extra bass so that I can EQ it out. I want the full amount first, and then I can choose to reduce later. So just for fun, here is EQ1 with the port plugged. And so yeah, you'll notice less bass output because this is from the port. And so it's nice and flat. It's actually usable. So here is EQ2 with the port plugged, and you'll notice, as you'd expect, just less bass output. The THX EQ mode with the port plug, again, just less bass. Just for fun, I wanted to see how it compared with another small subwoofer from SVS. This is a 3000 micro here in orange. And what I'm noticing is it can play a little bit deeper. The 3000 micro is also rated for 23 hertz is what they say. I have seen that. This was taken here in the office, so not a great situation, but I did notice that the other one is a larger subwoofer and it was able to play lower. Now, as far as which one could play louder and lower, I would probably have to go with the SVS on that one just because it just has two opposing 8-inch woofers and it has way more power. It's also $800 compared to $349. So take that as it is. All right, let's go ahead and put these on the speaker leaderboard. I'm gonna put them as a group and let's see where they place. Welcome back to the speaker leaderboard. Here we have the Monolith M518HT 5.1 system. This is a little bit weird because this is a 5.1 system with a subwoofer. The subwoofer is powered, the other speakers are passive. So it's kind of tough to compare it, but let's see where it fits in. On-wall speakers, these do work on-wall. Where would it fit compared to these? I think that the MOW1, this actually uses the same driver, so similar. These have more bass, and I think these are better if you're just to use them by themselves compared to these. They don't stick out as far, and yeah, overall, the terminals on the back are better. It does have a cutout for the wire, so I'd put that one on top, but this would go directly below it. So this column here is for the best passive desktop speakers, and without a doubt, I'm putting these on top. They're small enough, and you have 5 of them, so comparing this to any 2-channel system is almost unfair just because you're getting immersive sound. If I were to place these in the powered speaker category, they would be right up there with the Kali Audio as far as accuracy and overall sound. So they come in at $799 for the entire package. Right now, I would say that the T6 overall is just a better speaker. Just by definition, it's a larger speaker. If you were to place this, in a bigger space, I'm using this in a larger theater and they can fill that room with sound. They play deep and all that. But the problem is we're talking about 2 channels versus 5 channels here. So when it comes to immersiveness, 5 channels is going to beat 2 any day. But I feel like it wouldn't be right to put this above this one just because this is more capable if you were to get more of these, right? So just to be fair, I think the value proposition of 5 of these speakers and a sub is excellent. I think it'll have more bass than almost any of these speakers that we're looking at here. I keep repeating it. It's meant for a smaller room, so if you need loud, you may want to look at some of these other solutions and get a sub with them. And finally, best overall sound regardless of price. Man, they really do sound good right out of the box. They have a lot of bass. Some of these, they might not even be as accurate. I know these are pretty accurate. Overall sound regardless of price, I'm gonna have to put them somewhere around here. I do like the B6s also. It's just tough because these have a sub. Yeah, somewhere around here. I can't decide. If you want more immersive, then get the 5.1. If you plan on building out a system, get the Monolith Encore B6. So just to be fair, I think this is about right here. Below that, we have the Heiko Aurora 700 towers and the SingCell Alpha. This thing has a ton of features, ton of bass, but you're only getting one. So I think this is fair. The subwoofer you can buy separately, which is great. If you ever wanted to buy two, I could support that. And it's only $349 right now. The amplifier on it is not extremely powerful. It's 150 watts RMS, but they have the right driver, they have the right size enclosure, and it's just tuned very well. Let's go ahead and put the subwoofer on the Subwoofer Leaderboard. All right, here we are at the Subwoofer Leaderboard. We have the Monolith THX 8-inch 150 watt sub. This is right now going for $349. So it would fit in this under $500 category. So let's see here. We have the OSD Travoce 12 DSP, one that I built, an ELAC one, another OSD one, another OSD one. So under $500, I'm gonna have to put these on top just because out of the box, they can play low. And that's what I really like. Some of these you may be able to EQ them down lower, but the fact that this is already tuned to do that, I like. Best overall subwoofer. So usually with subs, the bigger, the more powerful, the stronger the driver, the better. And so this is a close competitor actually with a 3000 micro depending on the room size. Now the main difference, the 3000 micro has 800 watts. This has 150 watts. So this one is a little bit larger. It can play deeper in a room. So in certain cases, I could recommend this one over that. The KC62 is also a small subwoofer, but a lot of money, expensive, and a ton of watts though. So I'll probably put this here just to be fair, but just keep in mind that it's competing with these other ones that are much more expensive with much more wattage, and it's just because they've tuned it really well. So I can easily recommend this if you're not trying to spend too much on a sub. I want to reiterate that it's made for a small room, not a large one. So I've said a bunch of good things about this. Let's quickly talk about some downsides. First, the subwoofer is limited still. It's still an 8-inch sub. It's still limited in RMS power, so don't expect it to shake a large living room, large home theater. In a small room like this, it's fine. The same goes for the satellite speaker. It is a small speaker, so if you're gonna try to use it in a large room, you will notice that you can max it out. In a small room like this, again, it's fine. The other thing that I've mentioned to them is I wish that these did come in white. Not a problem for me, but you know, if you have white walls, it'd be nice to be able to kind of match it up there. The other thing that is not really a fault of this is that you still have to wire them up. If you're talking about 5 speakers, just remember, you still have to wire up 5 speakers. You gotta hide the wire anyway. So this leads to the connector on the back. I like to use banana plugs, and this doesn't accept all of the ones that I have. Otherwise, you should probably use some bare wire and that'll work fine. So overall summary and recommendation is that the sub is a welcome surprise. So at $349 for the sub, I could recommend the sub just itself for someone who's looking for an inexpensive subwoofer. So if you wanted to get 2 subs, I can always support that just because you'll get smoother bass overall. So the other thing is, I think these are a serious use case as studio monitors. Typically, I have some Kali Audio studio monitors that really are meant for mixing. These aren't really marketed that way, but they're accurate enough, and especially with EQ, you can really use these for monitors. I'm very familiar with how the Kali Audio ones sound. With EQ, I didn't feel like I was missing much with this. Actually, I have more bass with this situation. And I think this is gonna be great for somebody who's looking for a way to do immersive audio recording, just because you may not want to have to get powered speakers for every single speaker. And the fact that these are passive means that you only have to run one cable to each speaker. I think it's a great option for that. Now, the other thing is you can buy the satellites by themselves. I think that's cool. I think right now they come in pairs. I did recommend that maybe they should look into a bundle option where you can buy maybe 5 at a time. So right now you have 5, you can get 10, add some heights, you know, something like that. But you can buy them by themselves. The last thing is that there is a clear upgrade path for this. Because these are passive speakers, you still have to buy an amplifier, but the upgrade path is clear. You could either buy more of these, like I just said, you can buy some big boy subs. You can buy more of these subs. You know, you can buy an AVR with maybe more advanced room calibration. You know, so there's ways to expand, and that's what I'm always looking for in this hobby, is to get into it, but also to grow once you're here. So anyway, if you do have any more questions about this, again, leave them in the comments below. If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye. How about that name though? M518HT. If I were to guess, that's probably M for Monolith, 5.1, and 8 for the 8-inch subwoofer, HT for home theater. Boom! Hobie, am I right?